Thank you, everyone, for joining us. My name is Gina Clemmer, and I'm the Executive Director of Clinic HQ. I created Clinic HQ almost 15 years ago now, and we just keep evolving. And one of the pivotal things in our evolution has been the introduction of this idea of wellness appointments. When we first created Clinic HQ, it was strictly spay neuter. So we did that with what is now the ASPCA Spay Neuter Alliance. Then it was called Humane Alliance, and they didn't do any wellness. It just never even crossed my mind that we would need to do high volume wellness 15 years ago. And about, I'm going to say 7 or 8 years ago is when wellness started creeping into high volume spay neuter clinics. And what that kind of looked like was, hey, we'll take a few vaccine appointments. We might have a vaccine clinic where people come in and bring their animals to us. And then we started getting requests for that. And that's when we introduced kind of the main wellness scheduling calendar. And then we noticed that people started to do high volume vaccine clinics. And I got super interested in this idea in about 2019 and really started to study how high volume clinics work. I'm just absolutely obsessed with flow and how things flow at high volume clinics. And I did a lot of work on that. And so many of the tools that you see now in Clinic HQ kind of have evolved since 2019 when we went out to a clinic in Brownsville, Texas, and observed their high volume flow. And I'll talk a little bit about that later on. And then once I kind of started creating those tools and saw what was needed, then I started doing my own vaccine clinics at some reservation clinics that I was at that time volunteering for, and since then have started taking over with First Nations Vet. So I'm the executive director of First Nations Vet. Also, we do high volume spay, neuter, and wellness on Native American reservations. So I'm super interested in wellness, and I thank all of you so much for joining us. Today, we have Kylie Ramos with us from the San Francisco SPCA, and we are just absolutely thrilled. This is the first in our Coffee Talk series, and it's just an informal discussion really about the world of high volume vaccine clinics. And I'll share a little bit, but mostly Kylie, I have been so impressed with the San Francisco SPCA. They are doing the largest clinics that I know of, and they are doing them super well. Their flow is super impressive. Their respect for the clients and the animals is super impressive in how they do those clinics. So I'm just delighted that Kylie joined us today. So Kylie, if you wouldn't mind, just tell us a little bit about, you're with San Francisco SPCA, but about your title and what your role is there at San Francisco SPCA.
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Gina. So I am the Senior Central Valley Community Engagement Manager. It's a very long
Does all
title,
that fit
all
on
to
a business
say,
card?
barely, barely. But essentially, I stepped into this role to help build out programs to increase access to low cost and free spay neuter and preventative care in the Central Valley of California, which is an area that is very underserved. There is a veterinarian desert here as well. There's a lot of communities out here that have no clinics. So as far as having access to care, like someone really has to step up and go out into these communities and provide that care for people because they just don't have access. So that's basically my role. We're putting together low-cost spay neuter clinics and vaccine clinics across the Central Valley.
So I'm sorry, I don't know that much about California. I'm here in Oregon. California, I know, is down there, and I know where San Francisco is, but tell me where the Central Valley is. Like, what cities or areas does that kind of serve?
It starts in like Stockton, so just south of Sacramento, and runs all the way down to Bakersfield. So it's a very large area, essentially from Northern California to like almost Southern California. And we're
Wow.
working primarily in Stockton, Fresno, and Tulare County. So some of you may be familiar with some of those areas, but it is a large area that is very under-resourced.
And when you started thinking about doing vaccine clinics, how did you guys choose those areas specifically? Was it just like there's low income folks there, or like you mentioned, desert, like there's not a lot of resources there for access to care, or how to just, I mean, because I think a lot of the folks on this call probably are thinking a little bit about this concept, and I'm very interested in this concept too of targeting certain areas. And so that can be geographically targeting an area. It can also be targeting specific types of of pets, basically. So pets that belong to low-income folks. I've heard of other groups that specifically focus on Spanish-speaking populations. So how did you guys think about, like, I'm really interested in, I mean, you only have so many appointments that you can do. So you have to figure out how it's not like all comers. So can you talk just a little bit about how you guys, I think of this as targeting your appointments?
Yeah, so I'll step back a little bit. Big picture, you're probably thinking San Francisco SPCA, why are we working in the Central Valley of California? We have some long-standing partnerships with shelters in the Central Valley that originally started with a transport program. So San Francisco SPCA would bring animals in from the Central Valley to help alleviate that pressure and adopt them out in the Bay Area. And that turned into how do we not fix, but how do we address the bigger issue, which is overpopulation in these communities? So we're pulling animals, but what's causing that overpopulation? And it's lack of access to spay neuter and preventative care. So the team really started honing in on that and like, how can we address that? So that is why we originally started working in the Central Valley, and then those specific locations are communities that we had strong partnerships with. And then going deeper into it, the locations we pick for where our clinics are, we're trying to hit certain communities. We're trying to be more accessible to certain communities that we know are in an area that don't have a clinic nearby or a low-cost clinic nearby. So we try to be strategic about that. We want to be as
I
accessible as
love
possible to
that.
the community.
I love that. So thinking about like where you're physically holding it, it really just kind of brings the access to care to those communities specifically. Can you talk a little bit more about what you look for in a physical location? Like what's good to do a high volume spay neuter clinic in? Like what makes a good space, I guess?
Yeah, we've done quite a few clinics at a variety of locations. So we've tried doing them at the actual shelter, thinking, that is a community hub. We want to bring people here. Flow wasn't so great. So I think our biggest success has been with very large open, like fairground kind of areas. So very large parking lots. We also had our most successful clinic at a really large park in central Fresno. And the park just had this really long road that went all the way around the park. And it really made sense for our flow, like the way the cars came in.
Like,
There wasn't
isn't
like a
that?
bunch of ways cars could cut through. So it just
Mhm.
made a lot of sense. So I'd say like big parks and fairground type facilities.
I love that. It's like, yeah, like a circular flow, I think is so critical, you know?
Mhm.
Instead of people having to drive in and park somewhere or be confused about which way to go and stuff. So that's really a critical point. So when people are starting to think about maybe doing their own high volume clinics, so a park that has access like that would be super good. And did you guys have anyone help you with like the flow of traffic? Is that someone on your team that does that, or like city people or firemen, or does anyone kind of help you guys with the flow of traffic?
Yeah, it depends on our location. So I think one of the reasons Fresno was really successful was we had collaboration from the city of Fresno and the shelter there. So the city actually helped put up cones and blocked off certain areas. So when cars started lining up initially, they knew where to be. So that collaboration was super helpful. In other locations, we've just utilized our own volunteers to help with traffic and flow as well.
Yeah, totally. Some of the most successful ones that I've seen are also like at fire stations that have a circular flow, basically, where they can only drive in one way and then they go through, and then the firemen can help, guide parking and stuff like that too. So yeah, I'm obsessed with parking lot management. Like I'm super into parking lot management because that's where a lot of, I mean, stuff goes down. Like that's where the risk is. If you're thinking of it, if you have your sort of clinic manager hat on, you're an executive director of a program, then you have to think about mitigating risk. And so the risk at any spay neuter clinic or really any high volume clinic begins in the parking lot. What's happening in that parking lot, and that animals can jump out of cars or that people get bit or there's disease transmission, anything like that. So I love the idea of sort of logistics, and you just kind of almost have to think really clearly. The very first step in thinking about any planning these kind of clinics is is where are we going to hold it? And we want to set ourselves up for success where your own parking lot may not be the best spot for your high volume clinic. And I know that's a tough concept for some people to think about, but really, we have to think about kind of what the goals of the spay neuter clinic, I mean, of the vaccine clinic would be. And we'll talk about that here in just a second. But the idea that you may have to go offsite from your own specific location in order to get the best flow. And what I have found and what I hear you saying is this idea of a circular parking lot or a space where they can just drive in one way and then drive out the other way is the very, best kind of flow to set yourself up for, maximum impact. So let's talk just a little bit about what the goals of your clinics are. I mean, when you guys started thinking about planning these clinics, what were your goals for them?
Yeah, so the reason that we started doing these and kind of came up with this in the Central Valley is we've actually been doing what we call mobile vaccine clinics in San Francisco for quite a while now. So we're thinking, how do we duplicate this in the Central Valley? And I was familiar with Clinic HQ from previous work and was like, this would be, perfect to use for what we're doing. So we mimicked what we were doing in San Francisco with a similar goal of just trying to vaccinate as many animals as we could safely. Our goal is to provide, quality care. We're having interaction with the client, but we're not doing extra exams. We're not doing, like, we can answer a few questions, but we're not, standing there for a long time talking to the client about something other than vaccines or microchip or flea treatment. So that's one of our goals, and just kind of being really efficient, but, also providing quality care.
Yes, of course. And I love that. And it really brings up the idea about, so the first step, if the first step is logistics, the second step has to be, what are our goals for this clinic? And, if you're going to just haul all that stuff out there, you're going to haul all your staff out there. I think the goal has to be just what you said, to do as many as we possibly can in the time that we have available. And so, and it brings up the idea of different types of wellness. So this is a high volume vaccine clinic versus what I would think of as like medium wellness, which means you're doing more intensive care. So you're bringing animals maybe onto the rig that have a hurt paw or have a really like skin infection, and the veterinarian wants to see them and you might do a prescription. Those are also can be vaccine clinics, but I would think of those as more like what I would call sort of medium wellness clinics versus like a high volume vaccine clinic. So I think it's really important to define what your goal is and what your intention is. Both of those are super great kinds of clinics, they just are serving different things. So I'm wondering, with your goals about it to serve as sort of as many people as possible, how did you guys begin to start thinking about what some of the challenges would be, including sort of what your team structure would be? So what did you think some of the challenges would be in doing a super high volume clinic?
Initially, because we're working in a new location, just having enough staff and volunteers to meet our goal. Our first clinic we ever did in the Central Valley was in Stockton. And with our funder, we had like a really lofty goal of like, we're going to do 1,000 animals and it's going to be amazing and everything's going to go perfect. And it didn't. And we ended up doing a lot. I think we did close to 500, but to have enough staff and volunteers. And that was like initially our biggest challenge. And also being, the person kind of organizing all of it, I was concerned about the flow, just our first time in a new location, just how cars would come in and exit. Once you do it, like once you have one clinic and you see like how everything works, you just learn from that so much and then you can build off of it. But I think my initial concerns off the bat were just having enough people and how the flow was going to work with the cars.
Yeah, totally. Now, you'd also mentioned in a previous conversation something about kind of the time of year that you guys do clinics. Do you guys do them all year long, or how does that work?
Here in the Central Valley, it gets very, very hot starting in June. So like it's already 90 degrees here.
Wow.
And that typically lasts through sometimes the beginning of October. So just for the safety of our staff and clients and dogs, I mean, there's a lot of folks out here that have cars that don't have working AC, and sitting in their car waiting even for 20 minutes is dangerous. So we do
Mhm.
take a break during the summer. We try to get these all done like late fall through early spring. I am kind of toying with ideas of doing some like smaller indoor clinics for cats and things just so we can keep the ball rolling and continue to provide services. But as far as our drive-through clinics, we do have to pause in the summer because it's just too hot.
Yes, of course, absolutely. Now you mentioned cats. Can you tell us a little bit about, so a little bit about like ideally what, if I'm remembering correctly, your clinics are run from 9 to noon, and I'm assuming also because that does give you, if you're not going into kind of the heat of the day, you can get a little bit more time out of it. And so tell me a little bit about what your goals are in terms of the numbers that you'd like to do. Like what do you feel that you're able to do in that time frame comfortably? And then do you do dogs and cats, or can you talk a little bit about kind of what are the services that you guys provide?
Yeah, so right now we are only providing services for dogs at our drive-through clinic,
Hmm.
mostly because of the locations we're working at. We're a little worried about cats
Yeah,
escaping, but
yeah.
it's doable. It's something that we do in San Francisco and eventually we'll bring to the Central Valley. So in San Francisco, at our mobile vaccine clinics, we see dogs and cats. There's cat specific tents that we put up a pop-up, and then there's like a zipper tent inside of it.
Cool.
So you
Super
bring the cat
cool.
in, zip it up, provide the services. If the cat were to get out, it would be, enclosed in the tent, so it can't really escape. So that is an option. It does take a little bit more time. So if your goal is like ours, we're like, we want to do 500, um, it can slow you down a little bit. But if your goal is to provide services for dogs and cats, it's doable.
Yeah, that's
And
so cool. Yeah.
our goal varies by location as well. So in Stockton and Fresno, where there's a ton of people and we're working in a really big open area, we know that we can probably hit 500 with our team. In Tulare County, it's a little bit like smaller rural community that we're still kind of building up. So in there, when we're there, we do around like 350, 400. I think we hit like 425 last time. So it just
Super
kind of
awesome.
depends on the area.
Love it. Love it. So good. So good. And what kind of services? So you guys just do only vaccines like DHPP and rabies vaccines, or what do you guys do for your vaccines and services?
We started out just doing distemper parvo and rabies vaccines, and then we do oral flea and tick treatment case by case. So if a dog comes in, like severe infestation, we'll have a vet or tech come over and kind of assess and decide if they need to get treated. And that helps with kind of the flow of things of just keeping services very simple and like the essentials. But as we started holding these clinics more often and our partners, like our shelter partners, were getting more involved, we found that microchipping was really important to them. If the animal's coming through getting poked once or twice, what's one more poke for a microchip? We started offering microchips as well. I think October of last year, and I wrote down the number. We've microchipped, was it 1600? We've done 1600 microchips since we started in October offering them. So it's a much needed service, and we're happy to provide that.
Yeah, and it's also, and I don't know exactly what chips you use, but with HQ, if you're using either 24 Pet Watch or Pet Established chips, they auto register, so you don't have to do anything. Once you check them out, then it's no administrative burden to you to go back and register all those chips. So
Yeah, we specifically order 24 Pet Watch, or if our partner's offering to, purchase the microchips, we ask them to get those so that no one has to sit there and like register every chip. And we know that a lot of owners like forget if they have to register them or don't know how. So it just
Mhm.
takes that out of the equation, and we know that they're going to be registered.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about what some of the essential things that you use for kind of your check-in process. What are some key tools, I guess, that you feel really make an impact, like being able to do that many people or many animals, excuse
Um,
me.
yeah, having folks sign up with the e-appointments is critical. So we do still take walk-ins, but majority of the clients we see sign up online using e-appointments. So we're able to collect all their information, all their pets' information. And we also utilize the custom questions as well if we're trying to gather information, about how they heard about our clinic or anything like that. So that is a really important tool we use to kind of gauge how many people we think we're going to see, and also helping to, weed out any animals that we may not be able to provide services to. If they have some sort of medical condition, it doesn't waste their time coming down just to find out that we can't provide something to them.
For sure. Yeah. And with that, do you guys enable the consents that they sign ahead of time? So they sign their consent form to treat?
We do, yeah. And
Mhm.
majority of the people do sign them before they get there, which is really helpful when our check-in folks are going down the line. It's just one less thing they have to worry about.
For sure. Okay, cool. Any other tools that you feel like when you just think about doing that clinic that just takes some of the bottleneck out or just makes it faster? Anything else in that? I know you guys use
Um,
e-lobby.
yeah, we use eLobby for check-in, which we didn't always. I think we tried to use like just the regular check-in page when we were first starting. And I remember reaching out to you and I'm like, this isn't working.
Yeah,
What do we do?
yeah.
So yeah, switching to eLobby was huge. And even just showing volunteers, even if they didn't have prior training, just be like, this is eLobby. Look at this, drag them over. They're like, oh, I can do that. That's easy. So that
Yeah.
has been a really positive change for us, as well as using patient flow for our record keepers, and just, everything is in one place. It's really easy to send the paperwork to check them out. So those two changes have been really
Mhm.
huge for us.
Super great. All right, so I think what we can do, if you don't mind, you have prepped some photos for us. So I would just love to share that with folks. So I'm going to share sort of what those look like, and you can just tell me when you're ready for the next slide, and I'll just push it over. So first up, I love this. You're clearly identified where you are. Enter here. So that's super important to let people know. Are these, I mean, I've not used one of these little things. Are they very expensive? Do you know, to have one of these printed up just to hang out?
They're not that bad. Let's see, I can't see the slide on my end. Do you have it up?
Allie, are you able to see the slide? Is everyone able to see the slide?
I cannot see the slide.
Okay, hold on just a second.
Yeah, those banners they're not too bad, and you can shop around, but I think they're really helpful, especially if you're at a location that has multiple entrances. Um, this one was at a shelter we did in Tulare, but I think it's just really helpful to let people know where to enter.
Are you able to see the slides now?
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay. So yeah, so I'm gonna definitely look at those for our reservation clinics that we do. I think that would be super handy. Okay, so I'm gonna go to the next slide now. There we go. So here I'm seeing your team huddle, and can you talk just really very specifically about how many veterinarians you need? And I think California had a law fairly recently that changed where RVTs can administer or establish the patient veterinary relationship. So can you talk just really like numbers, like how many people do you have? How many are volunteers? How many vets? What makes up like a little team with your vet and your vet techs and stuff like that?
Yeah. So yes, in California, things might be a little different than other states. With SB 669, RVTs can run a vaccine clinic with a veterinarian's permission with their written protocols. And I have a packet that I can share with anyone who's interested in taking advantage of that in California. And
Yeah,
it
if you
gives you
share
all
it
of
with
the,
us, sorry to interrupt, I was just going to say, if for this coffee talk, what we'll do is collect the resources, and I would love for you to share that with us, and we'll put it in like the resources for this. So we'll share that with everyone. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, super helpful. Another thing with us, all of our services are free. So that does change the guidelines a little bit of who can vaccinate and what we're doing. We still have trained RVTs, vet assistants, and we do have a doctor that is at our clinics. So I'll kind of walk through that. So our treatment team, we usually have anywhere between 4 and 6 teams, depending on our location and how big our clinic's going to be. And that's made up of typically an RVT who is doing the kind of the lead, who's vaccinating and doing most of the having most of the conversation with the client. And then a vet assistant who is helping hold, helping prep services so that they're readily available to the RVT who's providing the service. And then we also have a record keeper that stays with that team. They're making sure that they're collecting all of the information of those services that are being provided.
And are they
So
putting that into
that,
patient for the record keeper? Are they using like a tablet and they're putting into patient flow?
yes.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
All right, so you have an RVT, you have a tech who's there to hold basically, and then you have a record keeper. And then and of that kind of team, how many of those little teams do you have like that?
We typically have 4 to 6 teams. So we usually have 4 to 6 tables set up and each table has a team. Then we
Okay.
also have our check-in folks. So depending on our flow, just using like Stockton, for an example, we'll have like 4 to 6 tables, which means we have 4 to 6 car lines. So we
Uh-huh.
have a check-in person that checks in each line. So 4 to 6 check-in people.
Okay.
And then we also, and they're using a tablet too. They're using eLobby to check folks in on Clinic HQ. And then we also have a vaccine prep team, which we'll talk about a little bit later,
Hmm.
usually anywhere between like 3 to 5 people, depending on the volume we're looking at. And then we also have traffic helpers as well that will help the entrance, the exit, making sure cars are getting into lines correctly, making sure that there's not a bunch of chaos in the back. So we have
Yeah.
helpers with that as well.
Chaos Wrangler. Got it.
Yes.
And how do you use volunteers versus paid staff? What can volunteers do at these kinds of clinics? Are they the parking lot helpers mostly?
Our volunteers do almost everything. We typically have paid staff as our RVT leads and some of the holders, but record keeping, check-in, vaccine prep, traffic flow, most of those roles are filled by volunteers.
Oh, so good.
And a lot of
That's
these folks, it's
amazing.
their first time. Yeah,
That's just
they're
amazing. You just have
we have
people
really great people.
volunteer to be able, people just volunteer to do that. That's so good. And
Yeah.
on the first time, do you just kind of show them, well, this is e-lobby, you just kind of like slide the card? I mean, and just,
Yeah. So we send out a couple of like what you need to know emails leading up
oh,
to the clinic for our volunteers and our staff. And it includes some like quick training videos on Clinic HQ as well as a little slideshow of like what to expect and how our flow is. So for
mhm.
anyone new, they're not just coming in, completely unaware of how we're doing things. They have a little bit of background on it.
Totally. That's amazing. What a super good idea. It never would have occurred to me to pre-send out like a little video like this is what your role is going to be and this is what you're going to do.
Yeah.
What kind of tablets do you guys use if you know, I don't know if you know, but
We use, I believe they're the Samsung Galaxy
okay.
tablets. Whatever they are, they work really well with Clinic HQ, which is great.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of them. So, each table is able to have one, each check-in person can have one, and they've been working really well for us.
That's super awesome. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and go to the next slide. Are you good with that?
Yeah,
This one
we're
here.
good.
Okay. Okay, can you talk with us like logistically, what you guys kind of have on these tables and what you sort of pre-prep basically?
Yeah, so we pull up diluent for our distemper parvo vaccines the night before. So that way in the morning, it's a little bit easier to just start pulling those up quickly. So depending on how many vaccines we plan to give during the clinic, we usually pull up like 100 to 200 diluents the night before. and just have those set aside. And then on each treatment table, we'll have a cooler for prepped vaccines. So we have a team that pulls up vaccines and then they just deliver them to the tables as needed so that our treatment team doesn't have to do it at the tables.
Mm-hmm.
We have our sharps containers, we have cleaning wipes, we usually have easy cheese and dog treats. Those are always very popular. Especially like at the end of the day, like everything's covered in cheese. It's just from the chaos. Everything has cheese in it. We also have towels for handling, slip leads. Slip leads go on every dog, even if they have a leash. We've seen too many dogs, try to wriggle out of their harnesses and collars. So they get a slip lead just to be safe if they exit their car. Yeah, so we just try to have everything we need at that table so our treatment team doesn't have to run around. And if they do, every table has a walkie so they can walkie to the vaccine prep team if they need any like additional supplies.
I love taping this trash bag onto the end of the table. Super handy.
Yeah.
And then also I see you have sort of this tent here. And do you guys do it rain or shine? Have you ever had one when it's raining outside?
We sure have. The end of April, we thought we were in the clear. We were in Tulare and it was pouring rain.
Wow.
And that's the nice thing about the drive-through model is that the clients, they don't care. They're in their car, they're fine. They're going to wait. Them and their dogs are, dry.
Yeah.
So as long as your team is up for, continuing to do it in the rain, you can do it. We have our little pop-up tents, but yeah, we do it rain or shine.
Yeah, and we've done a vaccine clinic in the rain once before, and you can get these clear rain ponchos from Amazon. They're just like disposable clear rain ponchos. And then if you have your tablet underneath the poncho, they're so thin that you can still be typing on the tablet and stuff. So it works really good that way too, to be able to see things.
Yeah.
Cool.
You have that many people that are counting on you. Like we had so many people sign up. The thought of canceling didn't even cross our minds.
I love it. I love it. And I see your team here sort of pulling up vaccines and everything. And so you have these nice big coolers, it looks like.
Yeah, we have a team that is dedicated to pulling vaccines. Usually we'll have a lead and that person's in charge of kind of keeping an eye on the lines, making sure we're not over pulling because we don't want to waste vaccines, but we want to make sure we have enough for our teams. So their job is really that like balance of kind of matching the flow of the cars that we're providing services to. But having people specifically do this will take that load off of your treatment team so that they don't have to be pulling and giving vaccines.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you guys start at 9, what time do you get there to set up?
Our volunteers, so our leads usually get there at 7, kind of assess the area, make sure that the tables are going to go where we thought they were going to go. And then everyone else usually shows up about 7:30 to help set up the tables. Our vaccine prep team will get started usually between like 7:45 and 8. So they have a pretty good head start before we start treatment.
Yeah. So, and I don't know if you guys know, if you guys use this, Kylie, but there's a report in Clinic HQ called Item Prep. And so once you have people sign up online, the item prep report will tell you how many vaccines you're expecting to give, basically. So you can just quickly and easily go to that to look.
Awesome. Yeah. I didn't even know about that. I love learning new things about Clinic HQ.
Cool. Yeah, yeah. And then, and then how long does it take you guys to break down after your clinic?
Breakdown is surprisingly fast, I think, because everyone's like so ready to just like be done and get out of it. I think like full breakdown probably takes like 20-30 minutes, but depending on the location, sometimes we have to repack our van, which is a very, it's like a puzzle in there. But yeah, I would say like 20 to 30 minutes because we have people breaking down tables, pop-ups, picking up cones. It's very quick.
And do you have to do any like significant data entry after the clinics, or do you strive mostly to just get everything done when you're there?
So I think it's important to mention that with new volunteers that sometimes struggle with the tablet, we do sometimes still use paper check-in if we have a few walk-ins and our volunteers aren't super strong in entering new clients in Clinic HQ. So there is a little bit of that data entry afterwards, and we try to get those in as soon as possible so that those folks can have their records and all that get in. But for the most part, most of our clients sign up online. And because of that, they're able to be checked in and checked out fully on the tablet, which is a lot less work for us afterwards. I mean, it's really no work for us afterwards.
Yeah, like with the microchips and stuff, do you just use the little like barcode scanner to scan the chip sticker and it just populates in HQ so you guys don't have to do that after the clinic or anything, put in all those microchips?
We really want to get barcode scanners. That's like a goal of
Yeah.
mine for this coming year. But we have, so our record keepers are typing in the microchip
Okay.
numbers
Yeah.
like
Yeah, I mean that works
in
too.
real
It's like
time.
yeah, it's like 16 digits. They can type it in while they're like getting the vaccines and stuff like that, you know. Yeah, and it is, it is a little cumbersome. I mean, too, to have like a barcode scanner sort of attached to your tablet, or you can just use the wireless ones too. Those kind of work. They don't work as good as the ones that are actually attached, but yeah, that is a really good point that maybe ultimately it's just easier to type in the 16 digits in real time, you know?
Yeah, I'm open to trying the barcode scanner. We just haven't gotten
Yeah.
that far yet. But if
Yeah.
anyone has like good suggestions for a wireless
Yeah.
one, I would be happy to try.
We used to have one in the manual. I'll do a little bit more research. We had one in the manual, but they stopped making it. And so that was the one we originally used. And I haven't revisited sort of the wireless ones, but maybe I'll have that as my goal this year too, is to figure out what's the very best barcode scanner wireless to do for these high volume vaccine clinics. Speaking
Yeah.
of goals, one of the goals here that we have Clinic HQ, very amazing clinic, Save an Angel in Bastrop, Texas, mentioned this idea to us about having some sort of like QR code that you could give walk-ins at a clinic. And while they're sitting in their car, they could just like point their camera at that and get it on their phone. And then they themselves could enter in their information. And then that would populate up in e-lobby. So those are goals. Those are HQ goals also to have, because as you know, you can't really give them anything like, because they can't in HQ make same day appointments. That would just cause like a different problem for all clinics basically. If you let people make same day appointments, then it's like chaos. They make it like 5 minutes before they're supposed to be there and suddenly you're overscheduled and stuff. But you could, I mean, what do you think about that idea? Like just giving them some sort of QR code on a piece of paper saying, scan this and try to type in your own information. That might help.
That would be a game changer for sure. Because we've toyed around with having like, we're like, how do we have people sign themselves up? But then you have to have someone like approving all of those on the other end. And we just couldn't figure out the best way to do it. So that would be amazing. Because we don't necessarily want to turn away same day people. Sometimes people don't have access to sign up online. They don't have a phone or computer or whatever.
Hmm.
So that would be really cool.
Yeah, I mean, so those are some of the tools. I mean, as we continue to evolve and like you guys you guys have in my mind, taken and elevated the vaccine clinics to these like amazing things. So now that we're good, we're all getting really good at it. Let's get even better, and figure out, all right, there's a little bottleneck, when someone shows up. I mean, I know you probably have a fairly large no-show rate since they're
Yeah.
free clinics. So, but at the same time, I mean, what I have found is like if you get a super high no-show rate, you can also do like, a post somewhere on social media saying, hey, free vaccine clinic, today, come on down. And then people come. And then it does, I mean, I think your flow is that you're giving them just a piece of paper to fill out. You kind of enter it into Clinic HQ yourself, which is absolutely perfect. That works too. But it is like a little bit of a log jam, to kind of do that. So yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, about what is your no-show rate? Like how many people don't show up and how do you fill it when they don't show up?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty high. I think it's getting a little better, but usually around like 40%
Mhm.
no show, but we do balance that out with same day, or at least, kind of balance it out with same day. So that's helpful for us. But you're right, because it's a free clinic. I think a lot of people sign up with the intent of going and, things come up or they forget even with the reminders.
Yes.
So it happens, but yeah, I think those walk-ins help balance out the no-shows. So yeah, if there
Yeah.
was an easier way to get them signed up directly on Clinic HQ that day, then I think that would help our flow even more.
Super, super good. So here we see a volunteer checking them in kind of on a tablet. And when they go up car side, what are some safety things that you tell your volunteers, or are there any safety things that you tell them? Um, like maybe don't reach your hands in the window. I don't
Yes.
know.
Yes. It's funny. We have some special guests that come out too, like to a lot of our clinics. We'll invite like city leaders or county leaders just to see like what we're doing and see the impact and why this is so important. And those are the folks too we really have to remind, like, don't reach in the car, don't touch the dog, because we try to limit how many times we're going up to the car. Ideally, it would just be for treatment, but check-in does have to go check-in. So we just let them know, like, we're just talking to the person, we're getting the information as quickly as we can, and we're moving on. There's no need to stress those dogs out in the car more than they already
Oh,
might be before they get to treatment. So we're just keeping things really simple and quick.
preach, preach, sister, preach. That is exactly it. Like we also do the same thing at our clinics is, we have volunteers and they're so happy to be a volunteer. Whoop, sorry. Allie,
I know I didn't hear the drill part.
Hey, Allie, can you remute people? Thank you. So yeah, and so and they're so well-meaning, they're so happy to be there, and they just want to pet the dogs. They just want to go in and just pet the dogs and go down and say, baby talk the dogs and stuff. And so a lot of what I'm really focused on is with these volunteers. I mean, the computer is one thing, but the other thing really is our biggest thing is we want to make sure that everyone is safe, and we want to have as stress-free situation as possible for the animals, for the owners, for the volunteers and everything. And so some of the things that we tell them is like, don't reach your hands in, to hand in a tablet or hand in a piece of paper, otherwise lest they get bit by a, feisty chihuahua, or something. And the other thing is that we always just make an announcement with our team, which is if you are not a part of our paid staff or a licensed veterinary technician or a veterinarian or in vet med as a volunteer, you're really not allowed to interact with the animals. And it is a bit of a deflating thing, and we try to say that when we send the materials ahead of time, we want to avoid trigger stacking for the dogs. So we don't want to walk up to the car multiple times. We don't want to interact with that pet. For you, it's a lovely experience, but for them, they're probably pretty scared to be there. So I'm really very interested in this whole, I mean, we see that as a part of a fear-free technique for high volume clinics, is to really just walk up to the window. And I read a research paper that said something about the idea that dogs are dogs feel safer and give less signs of stress when they see their owner positively interacting with the person that they're chatting with. So we always make it a point to smile at the owner and smile at the dog, basically, and then the owner starts talking to us and we start kind of vibing. And so once the pet sees that, just imperceptibly little things, make it easier on them. So I'm really into this whole idea of just come up to the car once or twice if you need to, and then just keep moving down the line, basically. So when the volunteer comes up here to the car and they have e-lobby, I'm assuming is what they're doing right there, how do they find the pet? Do they just use the little search tool in the upper right-hand corner and they just type in like the pet's name or the owner's name?
Yeah, so when I'm talking to volunteers ahead of time of like how to use eLobby, I typically tell them that it's easier to type in the client's last name because most of the people coming through our clinics have multiple pets. So they use that search bar, they find the pets they're looking for. I always let them know, make sure you confirm the pet's name and even the client's name, last name, because we have so many duplicate names when you have, hundreds of animals at a clinic. So they're using that search bar and then using eLobby to make sure their consent form is signed. They double check their services. They'll just read them back. Like, this is what we have down. This is still what you want your pets to receive. And then once all of that is good, they'll get moved into checked in status.
Yeah, perfect. And then once they're in checked-in status, that pushes it over to patient flow. And then I'm assuming you have another spot. So probably here you have your data person with a tablet somewhere that, so just to make it super clear for folks, they don't show up in patient flow until they're pushed over into checked-in status. And ideally, the way that that works is they're stacked up in patient flow in that order. And then if they're not, I mean, you can search for them quickly and easily. But then, so once they get kind of checked in curbside, then it pushes it over to the next team, so to speak. Is that how you guys kind of do it too, Kylie?
Yes, yeah. Once they're checked in and then that car makes their way to the treatment table, the record keeper will pull up that patient and patient flow and then do the record keeping there.
Yeah, and it's worth mentioning that some states have required, like here in Oregon, we have a required temperature or TPR before you can administer any services. Different state laws are different. North Carolina, for example, they don't have that. I don't know if in California they do or don't, but and so here in patient flow, it's really easy to just pop it up and you just put in the TPR and then any quick notes, it's just all just sort of button taps basically. Everything is by default normal, and then if it's abnormal, you can just tap the abnormal part of it. And then you can put in, of course, the microchip number. The services are already preloaded in there for what they're supposed to get. Is there anything else that you guys kind of do kind of at this juncture? I'm assuming then it's just sort of giving the vaccines.
Yeah, giving the vaccines and the record keepers ensuring that the services that are listed in Clinic HQ are accurate, putting that microchip number in, and then checking that pet out. So
Yeah.
very,
Yeah.
very simple.
Totally. There's like a little button in there where you just click done and then in patient flow. And then when you click done, it auto sends, and I don't know if you guys do this, but it auto sends the aftercare document, which for us is like a visit summary and what to look for signs of a vaccine reaction. Do you guys also just have it kind of auto email and text people that?
We do. Yeah, we have the auto email set up so they'll get their vaccine, like their treatment sheet and their aftercare instructions. And we list on the aftercare too where they can go for their next vaccines if they're due before we come back for another clinic.
Yeah, and so in there they also click the generate the rabies certificate button, and then that will put in the vaccine lot number. And if you guys do you do rabies tags at all, or some do, some don't?
We we don't do tags, but we do, create that certificate. So if they need
Mhm.
to present it, they have that actual certificate.
Yeah, and so if someone was doing tags, HQ just has an auto tag thing, so it just keeps the numbers rolling basically. So you would just pull that tag at that moment and you could just hand it to them. If anybody in this audience does tags, that would be kind of the way to do it. And then the cleanup. So, you guys are done, and do you guys kind of do a debrief at the end to just see how things went, or any other things that you do at the very, very end?
Yeah, so we attempt to do a debrief at the end. It's hard because sometimes we have folks that need to like get going really quick, but ideally we like to get together at the end after we're cleaned up, talk about, what was the highest number of pets in one car that you saw, or what was like a
Oh my
special
God.
story,
What
or
what is the highest number? Do you have a number that you know that you guys have done the highest number in one car?
yes, it would be 17.
Oh my God,
Yeah,
17. Were they
yeah.
all
It's
Chihuahuas?
They were all mostly medium dogs, but there were I think there were a couple litters of puppies. It's actually a really interesting story. I know we don't have time for it,
No, we
but
do. Yeah, hit us with it. We love good stories. Tell us about it.
this we have a Stockton coordinator who works out here with us at San Francisco SPCA, and he made contact with this woman while he was flyering for our vaccine clinic. It was actually just across the street from where our clinic was going to be held. And he noticed all these dogs running around her car and, went up and talked to her, let her know we're going to have a vaccine clinic the next day. She loaded up all of her dogs in her truck. They all had crates, and she, put in the work, drove over, and we actually ended up like pulling her aside into the shade so that we had like a specific pair of people go and vaccinate every single dog. A lot of
Yeah.
puppies, but, you know, I don't know, if she would have been able to get care anywhere else. So I'm really we're really grateful that she put in the work to load up all her
Totally,
dogs. And
absolutely.
even
I love
driving across the street, like the amount of work it takes
that.
to load up 17 dogs. So,
Absolutely. That is
yeah.
amazing. She must have been so thankful for those services, I would
She
imagine.
was,
Yeah.
yeah. And we actually had our vet go over and just kind of like talk to her if she had any concerns, because what are the odds she'd be able to go to a vet with 17 dogs? So we just
Yeah,
tried to address
totally.
what we could.
Totally. And on average, how many do you guys do? Like, what would be sort of an average day at one of your high volume clinics?
I would say on average around we probably see like around 500
That
dogs.
that's amazing.
Yeah,
That's
we've had
so
some that are less, we've had some that are more, but I think 500 is like, the average.
with a team about the size that we see here.
A little bit bigger. So I think some of our
Yeah.
volunteers had already left, but we usually have around 20 to 30 staff total.
Hmm.
Majority of them volunteers.
Yes, that's amazing. So amazing. And you bring up a good point about sort of pulling her aside. And that is one of the strategies too, is I love this idea. So since they pre-sign up, you're often able to see, man, we have someone who's bringing 10 dogs, and when that happens, what I have done in the past is be like, our clinic technically starts at 9, but could you come at 8:30 and just get those giant carfuls like out, and if you don't have time to do that, like exactly what you said, when you pull up, then when they pull up, then you can have a separate lane or a separate area, which are like, more time consuming things, over 5 dogs or something like that. And just a team even dedicated to just dealing with those situations,
Yeah.
and for us too, we do something specific. We like call it like leapfrogging or triaging. So when we do our work on reservations. And so when we have like 3 huskies in the back of a pickup truck, for us, that's going to be a flight risk. So it's very possible that they're going to jump out of that truck, or I mean, if they're tied into the sides of the truck, that they can jump out and hang themselves, and stuff. And so what we always do, we'll just have a special area where we can put that car. We'll just kind of take them out of line, since they are more of a flight risk. Or if we see that, someone has, five very stressed out, little dogs in a car. I mean, they're just having a hard time, and maybe 3 kids in there, and they're just trying to get to work and trying to get to school and stuff, then we can just kind of pull those out and work on those specifically, and have a team just sort of dedicated that kind of does that. But yeah, it's just like amazing. What you guys do is super amazing. I'm so impressed with what you do, and I believe it is the future of high volume vaccine clinics. And we want to help with that, and so we're always thinking about tools and bottlenecks and things that we can kind of do. I have one last question for you, and then we can wrap up, is how has the community sort of, responded to these clinics? I mean, do you guys see repeat clients coming back, or just what has your feedback been?
Yeah, I think the coolest thing in using Clinic HQ is you can see how many people are return clients. And we're starting to see that in all of our locations now. And the response, I think, is bigger and bigger each time we do this, because people are recognizing, oh, so and so went to that clinic and they got free services, and, it was very easy. Or I went last year and now my dog needs a booster, so I'm going to go again. So people are starting to, recognize when our flyers out in the community and what we're doing, and the response is bigger each time,
Oh,
which
for
is,
sure.
it's great, but also it can be overwhelming just because it doesn't always feel like we can meet the need. But that's why we want to continue to do this work, because that need is still there.
I love it. And it also sort of builds on itself, like you were saying, in the sense that now you have these people's email addresses, and you have their texts or their cell phone numbers, and you can, like, we sort of build on ourselves. So once we do our first one, then we can send out an email to people, basically, and saying, hey, we're coming back. And then they tell their sister, or they tell whomever, or something like that. So we we're about to wrap up, and I think we have time for about 2 questions, just 2 basic questions. So Allie has been sort of looking at those. Let's see here. Allie, if you can give us 1 or 2 questions that came from the chat, that would be super great.
There are a few questions on here about no-show rates and how do you kind of mitigate that, and how do you make it better?
I think we kind of talked about no-show rates. So they had said that they're about 40% no-show rate, and then they fill that in with walk-ins. And I know that you guys do communications, so you send emails, text messages, and robocalls and stuff like that. So maybe let's pick another one, Allie, if you have another
We
one.
didn't have too many questions that you didn't cover, honestly. If anyone wants to drop any questions that we didn't cover in the chat here, we can kind of go over
Yeah.
something.
Yeah, that sounds good. I can just look at that if somebody drops something in.
In the meantime, I can add one thing to the no-show. I don't know that if it's more helpful, but we open our e-appointments about 10 to 14 days before the clinic. We've noticed that if we open it earlier, we have even more no-shows. I think people see it initially and they want to go and then things come up. So if you give them enough time to plan and sign up, but not too much time, I think people are more committed to going or know that they're going to be available that day. So it might be helpful, but it's kind of a trial and error thing.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. We have two super great questions we'll cover, and then we're gonna wrap up. So the first is, do you guys have any SOPs for your vaccine clinics? Like any written up things that you give people that you could send to me and I could share with the group?
Yeah, I call them my huddle notes, but it's essentially everything we go over in our huddle. It talks about like medical, so like all of our medical protocols, clinic HQ protocols, everything. So I'd be happy to share that.
Yeah, okay, perfect. I'll get that from you and include it in our things. Second question is role of the vet to support the 4 to 6 teams. Do they just like stop by if they're needed? Or do you guys use walkie-talkies and you can call someone and say, please come over?
Yeah, exactly. Our vets are all different. So some like to float. They'll go table to table, see how things are going. And then if there is a case that they need to get eyes on, they'll walkie them. We have other vets that want to be in on the action and they're a vaccinator at a table. And then if something's going on, then they get pulled away for a little bit and we'll just have someone fill in for them. But, in California, like I mentioned, we don't necessarily have to have a vet on site because of SB 669, but we do have veterinarians that love being a part of these events. And I don't have the heart to say we don't need you.
Yeah, of
And it's good
course.
to just, they make some good connections with some of the clients. And I think that's important too.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, we do have one more question here that's important, I think. So, aside from slip leads, how do you prevent escape artists? We've had dogs jump out windows, someone says. So, do you guys have people roll up their windows, or how does that work?
Yeah, most folks do. And I think utilizing our check-in folks who are already kind of walking up and down the line just to make sure please make sure your windows are up or up enough that your dog can't get out. Surprisingly, we haven't had that many escapees. And like you mentioned before, those folks that do have their dogs in the back of the truck and we're a little, skeptical if they're going to stay there, we do pull those aside and kind of address those first just because it's a risk. But yeah, everyone gets a slip lead and we just make sure that, anyone that looks like they might be able to escape are addressed first, or we just let them know to roll up their windows.
Yeah, so we at our clinics, we have a person whose sole job it's a window checker. So it's their job to go down the line and say, could you just so politely say, we're just so worried about, pets escaping. Could you just roll up your windows? And then they'll usually say, oh, she's not going to jump out. We say, oh, I know, it's just our protocol. We have to have all the windows rolled up, And so we just make sure that all the windows are absolutely rolled up. And then our protocol is if someone does jump out a window, then we don't chase them. We have the owner pull off to the side and we give them a slip lead. And we then have the owner try to get their own pet, basically. So we just try to ignore the situation because the dog is looking to us. If we chase, they're going to run for sure. So we just try to have the owner do that. Absolute worst case scenario, owner can't catch the dog. Then we can set up a drop trap later to try to trap them. We have had only one scenario where that's happened in many years of doing it. And the dog actually came back and got in the drop trap. So that all worked out great. But yeah, you have to be so careful with that sort of thing. But having someone go down the line specifically to check windows, I think also helps.
That's our exact protocol too, is we all loose dog, we hand them a slip lead and we don't engage. So yeah, that's That's our same exact protocol.
That's the way to do it. A few people are asking about payments and how payments would work. I know you guys don't do that, but how I've seen it done in other clinics is once you get them checked in, then you can go down with a wireless credit card reader and just take their credit card in Clinic HQ. You can do payment right in eLobby. So payment would just be another step in the process while they're waiting to actually get their services. So for anyone who's listening out there in HQ land, that would be the preferred process for that. Or even better, have them prepay online so they can prepay for all their services before they actually even get to you, or at least offer them as an option. We have tools that it's like optional prepayment, and so they can prepay for all the services before they get there, leaving maybe only 20 to 30% that you actually have to go down the line and collect payment for. All right, everyone, thank you so much for all your super great questions. We want to respect people's time, and so we want to say I want to say a giant thank you to Kylie for joining us and sharing with us what your process is. Our goal is to just spread the knowledge, put the seeds out there, and I hope they grow for other people. And so I thank everyone for being here. We will post this up on Clinic HQ, the recording, so for anyone who missed it today, along with some resources. So thank you guys so much. Take care. In this video, we'll show you how to set up your Clinic HQ to do high volume vaccine clinics. If you look at your wellness settings, you'll notice that you'll have different rooms here that we call rooms. I've set up one called Lane 1. So to set up Lane 1, where you do that is you go to Settings, Scheduling, Wellness Settings, Rooms, and here I've set up Lane 1 from 9 to noon. Let's say my vaccine clinic is just going to run from 9 to noon, and if I look at that here, I can see that I want to make it active, and here that I want to have what types of appointments go in that room specifically, and so it's wellness vaccines. So here we can click save. The appointment types I've set up here for wellness vaccines, if we look at it here, it says that they're going to be 2 minutes apart. It's a non-anesthetic appointment, and if you're doing the PetSmart Charities reporting, then this would count towards total number of doctor, sick, well, euthanasia visits. If we set this appointment to be 2 minutes apart and we look at our wellness scheduler, if we open up our calculator, 9 to noon is 3 hours, and 3 hours times there's 60 minutes in an hour, that gives us overall 180 minutes. And if we schedule those appointments to be 2 minutes in duration, so we divide by 2, then we can do 90 animals in Lane 1 during our vaccine clinic. So if you would like to do more animals than that, you can set up another lane, or you can make these 1 minute apart. Our recommendation is to sort of mirror real life. We want these to be about 2 minutes per animal, so we would recommend setting up a second lane. So I'll just go ahead and do that here. So settings, scheduling, wellness settings, add new, and I will call this lane 2. It's also going to be from 9 a.m. to noon. Okay, and this will be order. This is the order that it displays on your screen. So we're going to put that as 2, and then we will put this as wellness vaccine as the type of appointments that are there. Okay, and wellness calendar, lane 1 and lane 2. So now that's going to give me 90 appointments times 2, so I have 180 appointments available. And if you wanted to do even more, you would just continue to add lanes. These lanes can correspond to a veterinarian, 1 or 2 technicians, a data entry person, and that would be considered a team for each lane specifically. Once you have your lanes and your appointment type set up, the next step is to set your actual calendar. So that means the calendar here, but it's interconnected to the calendar here. So you can display where you're going to be here on this calendar, and you can book from this calendar, but it also is displayed here. So depending on what type of scenario your clinic falls under, then you'll need to set up the calendar in different ways. And so meaning, are you just a stationary clinic with an occasional off-site vaccine clinic? Do you have a very busy mobile unit or fleet of mobile units? Do you have a stationary spay-neuter clinic and you just offer vaccines by people coming into your clinic? So there's all different kinds of scenarios. So in the next 4 examples, we'll cover those. So you can jump to whichever example seems closest to your type of situation. So for this scenario, you don't need to do anything special. By default, Clinic HQ has the spay-neuter calendar and the wellness calendar. So if you go through the process of setting up your individual appointments, as we've already chatted about, then you're pretty much set. You can close certain days or open certain days, have different rooms or lanes open for various things, and that is really all you need to do. So the wellness calendar is first and foremost controlled by the spay-neuter calendar, in the sense that you mark what days you're open and what days you're closed. If you're closed here, you'll need to open up the day, mark days open, and then change the spay-neuter capacities for that day. So adjust the capacities for that day specifically to 0, and then that's how you make it so you can be open for a wellness day but closed for spay-neuter on a specific day. And when people go online to start making appointments, they will be offered days that you are open over here, essentially. And if you wanted to close these days on the calendar, you simply click on the calendar, type whatever you want, closed, and then put in the time frame that you're closed until, and click Save Data, and that will close that day specifically. The next scenario is where you have off-site vaccine clinics. Anytime we begin to discuss off-site vaccine clinics, we get into what is called mobile clinics in Clinic HQ. And depending on whether or not you have just very occasional mobile clinics, you might be able to get away with just one profile. But if you have fairly routine mobile clinics, we're going to suggest having a second Clinic HQ profile. And what that would mean is in your Clinic HQ, you would have your standard stationary clinic and then a secondary profile for your mobile clinic. The secondary profile is at an additional cost, so the current pricing is $199 per month, and that is as of June 2025. But essentially, it's just paying for another instance of Clinic HQ. And what that allows you to do is have a very busy, active calendar and messaging and communications, all related to kind of your vaccine clinic. But in this scenario that we're talking about now, scenario 2, you have a stationary clinic with an occasional off-site clinic. And what that would mean is that you would set up, just as we have here with lane 1, for example, that could be off-site 1 or lane 1 is fine. And essentially you will be scheduling for just that specific lane. And on your calendar, what you would need to do is to set it up where you have a mobile clinic if it has a different location and address. So the mobile clinic, turn on here, enable mobile locations, and once you do that, under the scheduling section is where you would put in your mobile location. So in this way, I have 2 locations, for example, and since this is not our stationary clinic, then we're not going to mark it as our stationary clinic. In this example, it's just going to be an off-site place that we're holding a clinic. Here, you would go to the spay-neuter clinic calendar, and what we can see here is this is the Grant Community Center, and the mobile clinic is scheduled here. Say I'm going to do that every Wednesday, so here I can adjust mobile locations for today only. And this is, let's say, the Grant Community Center, and you can also repeat that. So let's say every Wednesday that's going to be the case. Repeat every Wednesday until, and let's say until the end of the year. That is how you set up for maybe a repeating vaccine clinic, and it is okay. Now what we can see is that calendar, it's opened up the Grant Community Center, and if we use the little arrow here, what we can see is every Wednesday there are appointments available for that. Okay, let's say you have a stationary clinic where clients come in and get vaccines throughout the day, but then you also have a mobile unit that you're scheduling for. What you can do is set up your stationary clinic as one of your mobile locations, and I realize it's not a mobile location, but what it does is it gets it in the list in 2 places. So presenting to the client where they would like to come in to get a vaccine. Do they want to come into your clinic, or do they want to go to your mobile location? And when you schedule internally, then you'll be able to select which one of those locations they're going to go to. And so you just create the mobile location as you normally would. And I've already created it here, but once it's created, you mark it as your stationary location. And then what that is going to do is to put it on the spay neuter calendar for all the days that you're open. What you can see here is on Wednesday the 11th, we actually have two different kind of vaccine clinics going on. What you have going on in your stationary clinic, but then also your mobile unit. So if you were going to schedule for that date, okay, you're dragging and dropping this appointment, then you would select at which location you're scheduling that client for. Okay, and then similarly, when people go online to schedule with you, they get the option of scheduling for your stationary clinic, like on Monday, but then on Wednesday, then there's two different options to schedule at your stationary clinic, but then also they can schedule at your mobile unit. So this way offers pretty complex vaccine scheduling, and it just kind of depends on how your clinic is set up and what sort of things you need. If this is your scenario, we do recommend it be set up slightly different, where you would have perhaps a lane for your mobile unit and a lane for your stationary clinic in case they have different hours. You could have different appointment types go to those different lanes. And just as a reminder, to schedule your mobile on a specific day, then you're going to click on the calendar and do adjust mobile locations for today. Select the mobile location, click add, and click close. And that's going to add that to the calendar as a location. Now let's say that you have a stationary spay-neuter clinic and you have a mobile unit that is very active. So it goes to lots of different spots throughout the week and just has a lot of clients and really just has kind of a life of its own. In that instance, we actually do recommend setting up a secondary profile in Clinic HQ. And so what that could be like is you have your main stationary clinic and then you have a second profile here for your mobile unit. And on the mobile unit, then you would just open up specific days that you're available, and here you'll notice that we don't have the ability to add any mobile units yet. That's because we haven't set up the settings. So you do need to go to settings, and you would go to your clinic profile, enable mobile locations, save the clinic profile, and now in scheduling, you could add in your mobile locations here. So all of the mobile locations that you provide clinics at, locations, you would go ahead and set those up here. And here, the location description, you can give some additional information, and this goes in the email that is sent to clients for their confirmation and for their reminders. Once you have that set up, you do need to give a look here at the wellness settings and see what rooms you have available set up. And the rooms here could correspond to individual mobile units. So if you have more than one unit, you could set up mobile unit 1, mobile unit 2. And the types of appointments then would just be what you offer on those mobile units. And in each one of the mobile unit rooms, it could have any appointment type that goes for all your mobile units, or you could constrain it to just certain appointment types. You would first set up the rooms, you would set up the appointment types, you would make sure that your mobile locations are set up. Okay, so then to put it on the calendar, you simply click on the date, adjust mobile locations for today, and simply add it. If you were going to have it repeat every Tuesday, you could select that, but for the most part, you're just going to click close, and then that adds the location. So in this way, you have a totally separate calendar. You could have totally separate reminders from your primary clinic, and those include having the mobile location, and then of course also the start time. So that's the time that they should arrive for their appointment. Here in the general settings for your vaccine clinic appointment, there are some options down here to allow your clients to upload proof of prior vaccines. This is going to be very helpful for you. So you can put something here in document upload instructions, and what it can say is something like, if you have proof of prior vaccinations, please upload here. And this will allow you to refine services and to make sure that the services that you have set up for them are the correct vaccines for that pet based on the age of the animal, based on the number of distemper parvo vaccines they've had previously, and any other information they provide. This will be a time saver and a confusion saver at clinic. So you want to go ahead and make this optional and put in a description here. This is what your client sees, the client-facing information here, and so we've put a note in that just says, please arrive as close to your scheduled time as possible, although you should expect some wait, as we do not see appointments exactly at the moment that they are scheduled. To edit that sort of description there, you can simply go to your settings, and here for the drive-through clinic, click Edit. And right here is the client-facing text that you can put in here. There are also some additional services that there are also some additional settings that you can tick or untick here. We recommend leaving it as is for the most part. Once you open up your schedule, naturally, you will get many people who will be signing up for your vaccine clinic. So what you'll need to do is to approve those appointments. Over here in the navigational panel, there's a couple of ways to get there. One is through online appointments here, and the other is just through the wellness calendar. So if you click on online appointments, we can see that the wellness appointments, you can see it has one pending. And what you're doing really is just mostly looking at the services that they're supposed to get. Here I can see they signed up for a rabies 1 year, DHPP first, and a microchip. I can also see that they've uploaded a document here. So let me just look at that document, and we can see here that it says that this pet got a rabies 1 year vaccine, but that was back in 2022. This is not really relevant to this patient, so you would just leave it as is. If you wanted to write a note or some such, you could write a note down here, and this note would print on the paperwork and be displayed in various places. You could also, though, if this had been a valid medical record, let's say you were going to change this to a rabies 3 year vaccine, then you could click on the services and remove the rabies 1 year here, and then add in, let's just say, a rabies 3 year here. We're scheduling because it is going to expedite your check-in line, but one of the best things about this situation is that we can refine the services. So what you want to do is not spend time curbside chatting about that and messing with that. You want to go ahead and solidify that now, what services the animal is supposed to get. And then here you can look at any other pertinent information that might interest you. Again, if you were to use like our priority appointment scheduling, you could focus on really specific areas like certain zip codes, for example. In this way, scheduling is super duper helpful. So let's go ahead then, and I'll just, in this example, do new owner, new animal, and we've now passed the appointment through. Once we pass the appointment through, they will get an email that lets them know the location, the time they're supposed to be there. And again, you could modify that by saying something like, hey, we may not get to you right at this time, but please come as close to your assigned time as possible, something along those lines. That's what we've kind of put in here. And what to do when you arrive is to stay in your vehicle, and a consent form has been sent to you. Okay, the consent form is here, and we can see this is Daisy's form. And in HQ, we just have one wellness consent form that can be used for everything. So in this example, if you do really only vaccine clinics, then it works out great. Where it may become a little cumbersome is if you do dental appointments and vaccine appointments. One is anesthetized and one is not. So you would need to change the language in here to what they're signing for. So you can put in something that says, if this is for a vaccine clinic, this is what you're agreeing to. If this is for any type of other vaccine appointment, this is what you're agreeing to. But in this example, we'll just have them go ahead and sign. And this is the consent for treatment. It establishes the veterinary-patient relationship. For any clinic, whether that be spay neuter, vaccine clinics, wellness clinics, whatever type of clinic you're running, one of the things that you'll want to do before that clinic is to review the paperwork. The first step in that is to go to the client section, print email paperwork. You can also pin this on the menu, so you can just do the most common things that you do all the time and just sort of pin it here. But what you'll do then is to tick the tick box to select all and print selected. And the first place to start would be the consent forms. And so we don't actually need to look at all the consent forms because that will include signed and unsigned. One advantage of doing that is if you have your notes displayed in there, then you can kind of look at it for all of them. But in this example, I'll just do the signed consent forms. Okay, and once I look at the signed consent forms, I can see here that I've asked a few questions. Does the animal have any current medical or health conditions? Have they been to a veterinarian? These are the same questions that we actually ask at our spay-neuter clinic. For a vaccine clinic, I do not feel that these are necessarily relevant. The only thing that I feel would be relevant would be, has this animal ever had a reaction to a vaccine? You can put that in as on your wellness form, for example, and what you're doing here is you're reviewing the answers to those questions. So in this specific case, I don't see that the client didn't answer any of the things that I had put in there. I don't have to worry about anything. But if you have a question like that and you see that there is a positive response to it, then you would need to call the client and maybe say, hey, why don't you come into our stationary clinic so we can monitor them for 30 minutes or so after they get this vaccine, so we can make sure that there's no complications. So the first step is to reviewing the inputs that your clients have given you, that you've asked for in your form. And if you don't see anything alarming or concerning, then you can really just go ahead and close that form. The second thing to do would be to print out the treatment sheet. So if you tick the tick box here, this has a treatment sheet for each patient, and it has the services that they're supposed to get. It also has all of their information up here, and it's basically a treatment sheet for the animal. The reason why we suggest printing these out for a vaccine clinic is not because we propose that you use them at the vaccine clinic. We actually suggest that you try to just be paperless, meaning you're just using tablets, curbside, and everything is there, so it's all done at the end of the day and you don't have to do anything. But this would be a backup. So imagine the scenario: you have a curbside vaccine clinic and for some reason you can't get your internet working, you can't get your hotspot working. Well, here at least you have what every patient is supposed to get, and you can use this piece of paper as a traveling document with the animal. Note any discrepancies or issues or service changes on this particular piece of paper if you just had to do it that way. So we always advocate kind of printing this out, even though you hopefully would never need to use it. You would at least have it there as a backup. So here you can just go ahead and print, and it's going to print your travel sheet. It is worth noting that you can also create your own. This is the standard treatment sheet that's built into Clinic HQ, and you can create your own if you prefer, or just use the one that we have here. The next thing that you'll want to do is to create a blank copy of your consent form. So you can easily do that just by simply deleting out the merge fields in your main copy. And once you do that, you can print out a bunch of blank copies, and that would just be for walk-ins that come in if you are not able to quickly and easily enter them into the computer. We highly suggest that you have someone proficient on your team that's able to simply set up an appointment for them, have them sign their consent form just on the tablet, but this would just be a blank just in case that's not easily possible for you. And then you can stash your blank here just as a new template, and you always know where it is, and you can just print out several hundred copies and just have that with you at clinic. Okay, we can see I have 3 appointments here, and that's not many for a vaccine clinic, but imagine that you have 300 appointments here. And what you would want to do is figure out how many supplies you need to bring. For example, how many of a certain vaccine or how many microchips, based on the services that we talked about in the last few sections. To access that, you would go over here to Reports, Metrics, item prep and change the date to your vaccine clinic, or maybe it's an internal vaccine clinic, so you could do the whole week to see kind of what you needed. But if you click go here, what you can see is that we have total number of rabies vaccines that are being requested, total number of rabies 3-year vaccines, and that is usually the same vaccine, just the duration is different if they have been vaccinated for rabies within the past 12 months. DHPP first, microchips. So in this way, this helps you to pack up your supplies and know how many vaccines, how many syringes, things along those lines that you would need to take with you. Okay, so let's say now it's the morning of clinic and you're all set up and people start showing up. Kylie spoke at length about the best layout for a curbside high volume vaccine clinic, which is going to be like a circular driveway. We realized that people have different driveway situations and you can't control everything, but that is going to be the fastest flow for you, which allows you to do the most animals. So we're going to assume that that is your situation. If it's not, there are other places in the Clinic HQ manual where we talk about parking lot management and where you can label parking spots that people can move into and do things like that. But for a truly high volume vaccine clinic, you're going to want it to be curbside and for it to just be flowing. The idea is that you want to spend about 2 minutes per animal. If there are 3 animals in a car, that would be 6 minutes for the car. And that really coincides very closely with how your scheduling is set up. So that means that's going to ensure a really good flow for you. Typically, we have timed it and know that with 1 veterinarian, 2 people to hold, and 1 admin person, that you should be able to do about 90 dogs in a 3-hour period. So if you want to do more than that, we suggest having maybe 2 lanes or 3 lanes, but in essence, that's about what you're going for. So to do that, you're going to need to use eLobby. eLobby is a tool that allows you to go curbside, and this is typically one person's on the team. This is their whole job, is just to go car to car and to check them in. This is what eLobby looks like. All of the pending appointments would be here on the left-hand side, and the first thing that your staffer would do is to walk over to the car, and typically it's going to be fastest if they ask like for the owner's last name. So up here in the upper right hand corner, they're going to start typing the last name, and in this example we can see Chris, and they say, oh, okay, you're Chris. I see, do you have Max, Zeke, and Jax with you? And they would say yes, or the person. So it's good to always confirm who the animals are, because they might say, oh no, I substituted Max for someone else, for example. So you're just confirming that you have the right owner and they have 3 animals, which is what they said they were going to bring, and that they have those 3 animals with them. Okay, and so that would be the first thing to do, is to just find owners in this way. But let's look here and let's say this is just an easy one here. Sydney Maddie has shown up and she has brought Lulu and Kai with her. And so we use a system called PASS, P-A-A-S-S. So P is to first confirm the phone number of the client, and this is going to be helpful later on, because if they don't have an email address, the aftercare instructions would be texted to this phone number just automatically through Clinic HQ. It's set up to look to see if there is an email, and if there is not one, then it will automatically text the aftercare instructions. So that phone number is going to be important to make sure that that's their cell phone number. Secondly, that's the P. The A in this situation has to do with animal history. If it is a vaccine clinic, your staffer might say something like, today we're going to do vaccines. Have any of your animals ever had a reaction to a vaccine? They would say no, they've never been vaccinated, or whatever that situation is. The next one is services. So here we can see it just tells you 3 services, and if the services are basically all the same for all the pets, you don't really need to click in here and look, but you can. So if you click on it, it's going to show you the services. So what your staffer would do then is to say, all right, so Lulu's going to get rabies 1 year and a distemper parvo vaccine, and this is the first in her series, plus a microchip. Is that correct? and they would say yes or no. If they say yes, you don't need to do anything else, but if they say no, you can click Edit Services and edit the services to reflect whatever the situation is. The next one is, the other S is signature, so have they already signed their consent forms? And in this instance, they already have. We'll talk about it momentarily if they have not already signed their consent forms. So that is what we call the pass system, and then for spay-neuter clinics, there's another A in there, which is when is the last time the animal ate. In a vaccine clinic, that is not a relevant question, so we don't need to ask that. Next up then, what your staffer or your volunteer would do is to go ahead and just slide their cards over into the next lane, and then depending on whether or not you need to take payment or not take payment, you can do a couple of things. Highly suggest that you previously set it up when they signed up for their appointment to take the payment for all their services in that moment. And that's going to be a huge time saver in the middle of the line. But if they haven't already done that, what you can do is send a payment request here. Okay, when you send the payment request, it sends it to their email and it includes payment for both of their pets for that day specifically. Okay, if you haven't already taken payment, you're going to have to figure out a way to take payment, which is going to be very time consuming at your clinic. So again, we recommend that you do it the other way. But one way that you could do this is to go to Accounting, Public Clients, and Apply Payment. Okay, so in essence, you would have two tabs open. You would have the e-lobby tab. Okay, and then you would have another tab here, and what we can see is Sydney Motti is here. Details, she's going to pay for both of these, so you're going to tick them. Okay, and then here you can tag which location you're at. But then depending, and that may help later to let you know where you collected these funds. And then depending on what kind of payment processing you have, you can do all sorts of options. So she can pay cash, which we do not recommend. She can do point of sale. That means you have a wireless credit card reader with you, and you can simply do a point of sale there. So if you do point of sale here, then you click Make Payment. It is going to prompt your credit card reader right then and there to beep and ask for payment. Okay, and then they would process it on the machine, and then it would update in Clinic HQ. I am not connected in this demo clinic to a credit card machine, so I'm going to go ahead and just get out of that. If you don't have a credit card machine, what you're able to do is to use our e-payment options, and you could simply type in all the information here. This is obviously not an ideal solution when you have 100 people waiting in line for vaccines, but it is available. If you use a different type of processor, you can do credit card manual. This is one that does not process in Clinic HQ, but you can transcribe it here to let the system know that you actually took a payment and pay this transaction. So those are the basic options for taking payment, and you can do that here. But the first line of defense really is, as we mentioned, what you want to do is click here and just send them the e-payment request that sends it to their email, and then just while they're sitting in their own vehicles, if they can check their email, then they're able to go ahead and just make payment that way. And once they make payment, this little dot right here turns green, and it changes this from $30 owed to $0 owed. So first line of defense is to collect payment when you set up the appointment. This is what we highly recommend. Second line of defense is to go through and just send these links, and they can do it in their car. Third line of defense would be to have a wireless credit card machine that you tote around with you. Maybe this is someone's whole job at clinic, is just to get the payments. And fourth line of defense is to physically type in the credit card information. Okay, but let's say now here what we're going to do is go ahead and check this one in, and we can go ahead and move them to checked in. Now, the reason why they need to be in the checked in lane is because that will put them into patient flow. So if you can imagine a scenario where you have a bunch of cars lined up and one person's going in to check them in first to make sure that this is the right person and the right services and the right animals, then the next stop that they're going to go to is where they actually will get a TPR done and the services rendered to them, so giving them the vaccines. When you check them into the checked in lane here, in patient flow, it will check them in. Okay, so here in patient flow, we can see if we switch it to non-anesthetic appointments, we can see here now that these are the patients that we checked in. So they line up in the order that you check them in. The way that it would be working is the car then gets to the next station, which has the veterinarian one or two technicians and an admin person, and the admin person has a tablet that they're working on, and they're listening for things like the TPR and whatnot. And we'll come back to this in a moment, but I just want to show you the link between eLobby and patient flow. So once you check them in here, they are going to show up here, which is what the service team will access when they deliver their services to them. Okay, other things here that you can do that may be helpful. So if they have not signed their consent form, you can click here and select bulk sign in person. And when they do that, then they can sign here. The way that we phrase this at our vaccine clinics is I will hold the tablet and you use your finger like a pen to sign. That tends to work really well. It's very efficient and people don't have to fuss around with the tablet accidentally closing the program and whatnot. You just always hold the tablet and then they finger sign. Here, another thing that you can do is move all of Chris Tanner's dogs to the board here. So we've now checked all of them in. Essentially, that's how you use eLobby. There are many other tools sort of built in here to eLobby, so we encourage you to look at the section in the manual all about eLobby and to do other things like add a toggle caution here. This lets everyone upstream know that they might need a muzzle for this animal or some fear-free handling. If they give you a different phone number, you can change it here by editing the owner. If they give you an email, then you can input that here. Here we can update the animals. If something needs to change here, then you can certainly do that. You can also add a team note here. So the team note might say something like, discuss right front paw with owner. Okay, and then what that will look like over in patient flow, we can see here to discuss right front paw with the owner. You can communicate with a team upstream by using the little notes section there, the team note section. You can add an appointment note, an animal note, a client note. If someone doesn't show up, you'll want to cancel or no-show them. No-showing would be preferable. Let's say now that you have a walk-in, how do you kind of deal with that? To do a walk-in, you're going to click a new walk-in here, and you would then do the drive-through vaccine clinic, the location that you're at, and just right on the tablet, your volunteer or staffer is asking this information. If they've been in your clinic before, then their information is going to pop up here, but let's just say they haven't. You can input the email address here if they don't have an email. You want to affirmatively click no email. You can put in their address here and then start putting in animal name and information. You'll also put in the services they are there for here, and you can put in if the animal has already been spay-neutered or not. Once you do that, you'll need to put in kind of a time here. Any time is fine. It doesn't matter since they're already there right in front of you. But essentially what you can do is either make the appointment and then go back to eLobby, and this would be very helpful if you have one person doing eLobby and one person's doing walk-ins. So here you can go ahead and just check them in, and it says put all appointments for this owner in progress, have owner bulk sign all consents now, and then you can just have them go ahead and sign the consent form. Okay, so that has now put them in, and that's how you would handle a walk-in situation. Other things to note about eLobby: owners can communicate with you via text here. Sometimes it's helpful to have a person or a volunteer in your clinic looking at the chat. So if they send a text to you before a vaccine clinic asking a question, then they can just respond to it through the chat message that way. Any notes would be available here also. If there were any notes about these animals, you would see all those things there. Okay, you can also pop up the animal history. So if you wanted to know what the history of the animal was, if they had a vaccine history, then you're simply able to use this little plus sign and pop that history up to see anything about prior history of the animal. As you can see, that there are a lot of tools built in here to eLobby that are advantageous for a vaccine clinic. The last piece of the puzzle is actually delivering the services and creating the patient's medical record. You can get a sense of that from the photo shown here. As a veterinarian and a technician first approach the animal, they will most likely need to take a temperature, pulse, and respiration. This is known as a TPR. Some states require a TPR before any services are rendered, and some states do not. Here it's important to check your state regulations. If it is required to take a TPR, this is easily documented in Clinic HQ in the patient record. Let's have a look now at patient flow and go over the key parts of what most likely would need to be filled in for a vaccine appointment. So on a tablet, a volunteer or a staff person would go to patient flow and switch over to non-anesthetic. And here we have all of the checked in clients. The very next step for this is to go to jump to finalize. And within here, what you're able to do is to update the medical record with key information. Usually the starting point here is to click update on the exam section. You may want to change the veterinarian, put in the temperature, put in the pulse, and put in the respiration. Okay, you can indicate any animal behaviors if you have time to do that. Certainly you're able to do that. And then everything else here for ease of reference is marked within normal limits. If something is abnormal and the veterinarian mentions it, then you can certainly tap the abnormal button on any of these specific things. And you can also put in any internal medical notes that the veterinarian notes. You could also set up medical short tags. These are little tap buttons such as fleas, dermatitis, anything along those lines, and it will drop a blurb into the client communication section as well. For now though, this is about what a person would do. Here in services, this is the main part. So you'll need to have a system where the data person says rabies 1 year, DHPP, microchip. So they tell the veterinarian what the services will be and then the veterinarian. So they tell the veterinarian what the services will be. Here we see the note that says discuss right front paw with the owner, and the data person can mention that to the veterinarian. Okay, you can generate client communication, and these are the blurbs that are keyed up in Clinic HQ. You would then generate the rabies information here. This is what goes on the rabies certificate, and the rabies certificate is a part of the visit summary and aftercare documentation. And if they received a microchip, they would type in the microchip number here now. We are currently integrated with 24 Pet Watch, Pet Established, and Pet Link. After you close out this record or check out this record, this information will be auto-registered, and neither your staff nor the client would need to do anything to get it to be registered. In this example, I will remove the microchip just to show you here how to remove a service. So let's say they decide they don't want that, even though the services have already been confirmed ahead of time. You can certainly remove that service there. And finally, what you would do is simply click done. And when you click done, you can set these up so they actually are auto ticked, and you should definitely do that in the settings. Settings, patient flow automations. It would automatically come over to put the animal in checked out status, email the take home paperwork if there's an email on file, and if not, then text it to the client. And we won't have a printer at clinic, so you don't necessarily need to do that. You don't need to text message them. Their animal's ready to be picked up, and you can simply click proceed here. And once that's done, then it automatically marks them as being done, and you then are ready for the next animal. So you go to the roster, so on and so forth. So basically that is all you have to do to get their medical records to be accurate. The system automatically emails them or texts them their aftercare documents. You have to have those set up as a template, of course, and creates the medical record for them. We hope you've enjoyed learning about how these tools work in Clinic HQ.